people are in the churches today who have given their life to Jesus, believe they're going to heaven, believe that Jesus died on the cross for them, believe that there is a covenant relationship that God says, you're my son, you're my daughter, but you are still totally intimidated in agreement with the lies of the enemy of what your daddy said, your mama said, your brother said, everybody else said, and you are cowering down to the intimidating circumstances of your life instead of saying, who are you and what are you to stand against me? If God's for me, you ain't standing against me.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to be with you today at the conference. Man, I hope you're having a great time, and I'm just glad I get to be a part of this. I was hoping to be here live, but it just ended up landing on the same time that I'm with John Maxwell in Guatemala. In fact, we're taking 6 of our elders and leaders of our church down to Guatemala, and we're scheduled to meet with 36,000 roundtable facilitators and people who've been in roundtables for the national transformation stuff. That John's been there for a couple of years now, and these guys are coming in, many of which have never heard the presentation of the gospel. And so our guys are going because we've been investing in buying $100,000 worth of Bibles because we're expecting 16,000 people to get saved. So what he does is he just adds value to the people, teaching them on values, teaching them on leadership, and because it's so transformational for their lives, for their families, for their businesses, all these people. And it's not just, these aren't people in the churches necessarily, they're business people, government people, all of the police, all of the military of the government, all of the teachers and the educators in the whole nation. And then what he does is come back, and they're going to be in a stadium that fits about 12,000 people, and we'll fill it 3 times. And then at the end of his talk, he just says, hey, if you want, go. We're going to give a 10-minute break. If you want to stay after, and I'm going to tell you where I got all of this material. And then he tells them about the 4 pictures of God, and 90% of all the people get saved that stay. So it's pretty amazing. So I wish I could be with you, but I'm also excited about being in Guatemala and what we're doing this week. Now, I was talking to Joseph about this. What do you think we should talk about? What could we do, and what would be fun? And one of the things that he thought is, I was sitting with Joseph the other day, and I was just telling him about the trips with John. I've been in a couple of countries. This is my 3rd country this year to be with John on these national transformation activity or opportunities. And I was telling him about how John just gains influence everywhere he goes by adding value to people, and how he does even a talk about adding value. And I was telling Joseph some of the stories and some of the things. He goes, man, I wish you could just sit and just talk to people about this, all of the youth pastors, because this would be huge. And I said, well, why don't I make the talk about that? And so here we are. I got a table. Come on up, sit at the table with me if you would, in your heart. And I got me some coffee. And if it's okay with you, I'll just tell you kind of some of the stuff I've been learning and seeing in John. Well, first of all, I was thinking about back when I was a youth pastor. I don't know if you know this, but I was a youth pastor for 14 years, 12 years here at the church, 2 with my dad in Austin before I became the pastor. And I'll tell you, when I was young, I wanted to be a great leader. I wanted to be a strong leader, but there was sometimes I got frustrated, like, man, we could really do something great around here if people help me. We could really do great things around here if any of these kids, youth, all you youth would invite your friends or do something and disciple people, like this. And I didn't realize that perhaps, the Lord was telling me, hey, I didn't call you to be a general. I called you to be a shepherd. And instead of you trying to get all upset because things aren't happening fast enough or people won't help you to do your vision, that the Lord says, really, quit thinking about them doing your vision and realize they are your vision. That's the vision I've given you, is to shepherd them and to lead them. It really kind of changed things in my heart, is that I kind of looked at people as machinery. That's so gross for me to even think about it, but that's where I was at. I looked at the youth in the youth group as the machinery to enable me to accomplish the vision of doing something great for God, instead of seeing them as people that God had given to me and trusted to me as a shepherd to disciple and to train and to empower. And it wasn't until I got some teaching from John Maxwell on some Enjoy tapes growing up that I understood what leadership was. Leadership is influence. Obviously, we've heard him say that over and over, but he broke down what influence is. Influence has to do with 2 words, respect and relationship. In other words, if you have respect of the people, then, I respect you, you know what you're doing. And basically respect comes down to these two words, character and competency. Think of a mechanic. Hey, you know a good mechanic that could help me with my car? What are the two questions you ask? Do they know what they're doing, and are they going to cheat me? Okay, that's the competency and the character question, is that as a leader, can they trust you that you actually know what you're doing as a youth pastor, as a youth leader, and can they really trust your heart that you're not manipulating or trying to do something that's good for you, but you're really actually focused on helping them do something good for them? That's the respect. The relationship has to do with, do they like you? So it's not just I respect you, but do I want to be with you? Are you magnetic in who you are as a person? That doesn't mean that you have to be the cool guy. That doesn't mean you have to be the funniest. I thought that, okay? I thought as a youth pastor, my whole deal was kids would love me if I was funny. And the sad thing about it is sometimes I would make jokes that weren't that funny to some kids because it was at their expense. I remember one time there was this girl, I was only 19 years old. I had just become a youth pastor, and there's this girl, she was a cheerleader at a school, and I went to the football game, and we didn't get tickets. I was just trying to be a good youth pastor, go to the football game. I was way up at the very top of the stands, and she was down on the field as a cheerleader, and I saw her down there and all that. And on Sunday, I just looked at her and said, "Hey, girl, good to see you. Man, I was at the game." "You were?" "Yeah, I was way up at the top." "Man, you look good from way up there." Like that, just being funny. Like, "Hey, you look good in the dark." Just being funny, not even thinking about anything. She went home, bawled and cried and said, "Man, I'm never going to that church again." I didn't even think about it, but she had a little bit of acne issue. And what she thought I was saying is, from up there, I couldn't see your blemishes. And it so broke her heart. She said, if that's how the youth pastor talks to me, and so I was trying to be relational and build my relational impact by being funny, when in all actuality, the way you build your relational connect is by adding value. Now, if you have respect, but you don't have relationship, then people look to you as a general. Yes, sir. And maybe they'll follow you for a while until they find somebody they respect and they like. If they like you, but they don't respect you, like, man, he's really cool, but he doesn't really know what he's doing, then they'll like being your friend, but they don't really look to you as a leader. And so you got to have both these components. Now, for the sake of our talk right now, I want to really just hone in on the relationship aspect of relational influence and talk about adding value to people. One of the talks that John did, he does every single time, like I've heard it now like 20 times, because it's every single day. If we're with the business people, this is what he talks about. If we're with the educators, this is what he talks about. When we did all of the military police of Costa Rica, this is what he talked about. I mean, everywhere he went. When we were with the vice president, when we were with all of the cabinet and all of the judicial system of Nairobi, this is what he talked about. Every time he talked about, guys, what if we became people of greater influence by adding value? And here are the 5 things I think of when we talk about adding value. So I'm going to share with you the 5 points or the 5 steps of adding value, which increases your influence. But each one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, I learned from John Maxwell firsthand, not just what he's talking about, but I'm going to give you a couple examples of what I saw him do while we were on the trip that has to do with this. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And I got some pictures too. So each time it's going to be kind of like, hey, let me show you my trip, and my pictures of my trip. So the first thing is, he says, first thing you got to do is choose. You got to make the choice that your life is going to be about adding value to others every single day. Add value to others every single day. And he makes an emphasis. He goes, I mean every single day. Every day. It's every day. Every day. When I say every day, I mean every day. That's what he'll talk about. And he says, every single day I make a choice. It's my choice that I'm not looking for people to add value to me. I'm looking every day to find ways to add value to people. Now, let me just give you a couple examples on this. Number one is, every single day that we spoke places, there would be hundreds of people there, okay? Hundreds. And I'm not just talking about people of great power. And because, somebody very important wanted to talk to you, then yeah, you got time for it. Let me tell you something. We would be with students, with hundreds and hundreds of students. We'd be in places where there were people of not incredible influence, and John Maxwell stayed to the very last moment of anybody waiting to talk to him. Every person that came up, I remember being in Costa Rica and this guy walked up and he had a Developing the Leader Within You book that must be, it was like held together with tape wrapped around it. And he brought it for John to sign it to him. And John stood there and just talked to the guy and signed it and he said, hey, I want a picture with you, and took a picture with him. What I'm just telling you is I am amazed that John, at the level of where he's at, spent time with every single person, took a picture with every single person. He announced every single time he was somewhere, hey, if you brought a book with you, I'd like to have a chance to sign it before you go. If you would, come back afterwards and let me sign it for you and take a picture. That to me, he's made a choice. I'm going to add value to people. One night, or every single night, this is the second thing, every single night after we were done teaching and going all these, let me tell you, we would get up almost every morning at like 6 in the morning, be leaving at about 7:30, to go to meetings that usually we did not get done until about 10 o'clock at night. When we'd get back to the hotel and we're all walking in, and it's a group of about 8 to 10, as we would come in, you know what John would do? You would think the guy's 71 years old, it's time to go to bed, right? No, he'd go, where are y'all going? Almost every night we'd go, okay, where are y'all going? We got to get some, hey, Mark, make sure we got a room here. We need to get some desserts in there. Just order as many desserts as we can get and put them in there. We got to hang out, man. What are y'all doing? And we'd sit down, and you know what? We wouldn't just debrief the day. That's what I would think. You know what he'd do? He'd say, hey, what do we want to talk about tonight? How about we do this? What's your favorite band of all time? If you could go to any concert of any time in history, what band would you want to listen to? And everybody would talk. He'd go, oh, I like that. And we'd laugh and say stuff. One night it was like, hey, if you could meet anybody in the Bible besides Jesus, who'd want to meet? Every single night was just, he would create. And you know what he'd always go? Aren't we having fun? Some people say, man, and when we eat or when we do this, it's boring. Let me tell you something. There are no boring meals, just boring people. That's what he would say all the time. He'd go, man, some people just eat lunch. Man, I do lunch. Man, this is what we do. And so what he's doing is he's adding value with whoever he's with in the conversation and creating it. Pretty fun. On the second point is you don't just choose to add values, but you think of ways to add value to people. In other words, he doesn't just, hey, I'm going to add value. He's actually, in the morning, he would say, get his calendar out and say, these are the things I'm going to do today. Who am I going to be with? What am I going to be doing? And he would actually try to think of ways to add value when he got in those situations. One of the things that he does very intentional, which I love, because after he did it a couple of times, he said, Scott, come here, I want to show you something. I said, what? He says, notice that when I'm in this room in just a minute, I'm going to meet these people, and they're going to, a lot of times they'll want to have a picture with me, but I try to preempt it that before they can ask me for a picture with me, I ask them to take a picture with me for me. Hey, get my camera. I want to take a picture. He says there's just something about adding value to people that they may want a picture with me, but for me to say, no, I want a picture with you before they get even asked, it's a big deal. Do you know you could do that with kids? Instead of waiting like, hey, say, hey, come here, guys. Can I get a picture with you guys? It just is a value add. Very simple that anybody can do. So as you even see some of the pictures here, this guy, Isaac, came up and John said, hey, Mark, get over here. You got to get a picture with this guy. I got to get a picture with him. And they took a picture. And this guy, guess what? This is his story. He had come up to John and he had said to him, he was a senator, right? But here's his story. That back when he graduated college, he got a job in America. This guy's in Nairobi. He got a job in America, 6 figures out of college. He had a girlfriend that he was about to get married with. The girl dumped him and left him. He lost his job because of just a transition in what they were doing. And he came home without the girl, without a job, and broke. And he said he was so depressed out of his mind. He had kind of because he moved to America, he had lost his friends and his connections, that one day he got up and he was walking down the street in Nairobi. And when he was walking by, there was a little street vendor that had books out there, and he saw a paper-covered, a paperback book that said "Fail Forward" by John Maxwell. He picked up that book. He said, fail forward. I've never heard that. I'm a failure, but I'm failing backwards. So I want to fail forward. He bought that book, read it. He said, it changed my life, John. And I turned things around, and now I'm a senator for the nation of Kenya. And John goes, that is amazing. Come here, get us a picture of this guy. And that guy's got tears coming down his face taking a picture. That's a value add. Just saying, man, I want to honor this guy. And it was huge. Another way that he thinks about doing it, that I thought this idea was gigantic. I am going to do this. I can't wait to figure out what to do and how to do it. But John has his CEO of all 6 of his companies is this guy named Mark Cole. It's his guy. That's his right-hand man. Travels everywhere with him, right? So this week when we were in Nairobi, or 2 weeks ago when we were in Nairobi, and we're in Guatemala now, but 2 weeks ago when we were in Nairobi, it was the 22nd country that John and Mark have gone to together. So guess what they do? John came up with this idea that every country he and Mark go to together, they are going to find the Mont Blanc store. You know, Mont Blanc pens, they're pretty expensive and cool, and they range, hundreds of dollars into some are thousands of dollars. That every nation they go to, they find the Mont Blanc store, and they go in together, and John just goes, have at it. Any pen in the store you want from this nation, I'm buying it for you. And so they do it as this fun adventure. They find the store, and then they go through. And like one time they were in Singapore. See, every one of these have a story to it, and it makes a moment. One time they were in Singapore, and they went into a store, and it was on July 4th. So they're really depressed that they weren't home. And guess what they found? A JFK memorial pen, Mont Blanc pen. And so on the 4th of July in Singapore, they got one that was red, white, and blue with JFK, and that was the one they got. Now what they do is they get the salesperson with John and Mark together. Look at this picture. They get it together, and they take a picture with the salesperson, and then he didn't even write with the pen. When he gets back home, Mark puts that picture up on the wall in a case with the pen from that country and the little story. What's special about that trip. Isn't that cool? Well, while we were there this time, Pastor Gibson, who is the pastor of the church in Kenya, in Nairobi at International Christian Center, he drove us over to the store. So while we were in the store and Mark picked it out, me and Gibson are standing to the side. He said, Pastor Gibson, come here. And Gibson walks over. He says, pick any pen you want. I'm buying you one today too. Gibson almost has tears. He's shocked. He gets a picture with me and John. John says, hey, let's get a picture together. We got to get a picture. And so it's John and me and Pastor Gibson, and he has that pen. Man, he guarded that pen with his life. He wouldn't let anybody touch it. It was so special. But see, what did he do? He was thinking of ways that he could add value. He didn't just say, I'm going to add value. We went an hour to a store for him to figure out a way to add value to Gibson and to Mark. Pretty cool. The third one is, don't just think of ways. That it may be as you're walking around, you can look for ways. So some is in the morning, you're thinking of how you can do it. Others appear. You see it as you're going. So you look for ways to add value to people. That's number 3. So when we were in Costa Rica, there was, this is so cool. John Maxwell has a team of coaches, right? It's called the JMT, the John Maxwell team of coaches. They have over 20,000 John Maxwell coaches around the world now trained. So every time he goes into a country, he sends out an email and says, hey, the first 250 who will sign up, who want to go to Costa Rica, who want to go to Nairobi with me, who want to go to Guatemala with me, we're going to be training 15,000 roundtable facilitators. If you want to come, it's on this date. Sign up now. And I mean, it's like concert tickets of a big rock star because like that, the 250 places are filled. But they're paying their own way, their own everything to come and to be able to be a part of the team, to be a part of it. So what John does is he looks for ways every time to honor them. Well, on this one day when we were in Costa Rica, we just did this big rally, and a bunch of the coaches were there, had been training. In 1 week's time, 250 leaders were there in Costa Rica, training 15,000 in 1 week roundtable facilitators. So we knew these guys as we were going from this rally back to another rally across town. We knew that the 250 JMT guys were at this church, and the pastor of this church was feeding them and buying food. And he knew we were driving, and it would be about 15 minutes out of our way, and it wasn't on the schedule, but John goes, hey, they're over there like 15 minutes. Oh, yeah, they're over there with Pastor. Let's go by there. Let's go by. Let's surprise them. So it's just on the fly. John says it turns the bus to where we're going to see that pastor at this church in this remote village where the 250 JMT people are, and nobody even knows. That pastor has no clue he's coming. He walks in, and that pastor freaks out. You know, all of the team members are freaking out. That pastor comes over, starts crying, hugging him. You know, I can't believe John Maxwell's at my church. Starts showing him around. John signs a book for him. He talks to the team, thanking them for what's going on, and that pastor just walked all the way through the building with him. He just made the guy's life, just adding value, just looking for ways, and it was just on the fly. Back to the remember when we were talking about finding the Mont Blanc store? Well, one day before we had gone, we were sitting at the table eating lunch, and John goes, hey, we got to find that store. But then he goes, you know what? I don't think I'm really going to start. I mean, with Mark, we got this thing with the Mont Blanc. I love that because that's our thing. And man, we're gonna fill his wall up with nations, man. But he said, but you know, I'm not really into buying stuff for people as much anymore. You know what I want to do? And I said, what? He goes, you know, I want to start giving my stuff away. Because I've bought all kinds of stuff, and I have so many nice things from all over the world, things that I have. And, you know, I just think the things that I own and giving to somebody, I think that means more. I think that means more. And I'm telling you, everybody around John, all of us on the team are the big, you think I'm smart aleck. Some of y'all know me. You think, man, you're smart aleck. You're always kind of jabbing on. I am the lowest man on the totem pole when it comes to smart aleck on this team, okay? I'm like the guy they're all smart aleck about. I'm like the butt of the jokes, okay? But, and so one of the guys, he spoke up and said, well, John, if you're wanting to give things away and stuff, I've always kind of liked that watch, because he's got like a very nice watch on his wrist. And John goes, you know what? He starts taking off, and Terrence, it's his guy who runs Equip and all of his mission stuff. Terrence goes, no, I'm just kidding. He said, I know you're kidding. You're being a smart aleck, and that's just how we roll around here. If you can't be a smart aleck, can't be on our team. That's how it is. But he took his watch off, and he goes, but Terrence, you know what? You've been doing such a good job for me. You've been with me a little over a year, and I'm so thankful. I want you to have this watch. I'm talking about unbelievable watch. He said, I want you to have this watch. And every day that you look down at that watch, I want you to remember I love you. And I want you to pray for me. And if my ministry doesn't do better in the next year, then I'm going to ask for the watch back. I think that's funny. But he gave it to him, and he stood up, and they took a picture, and he's got his watch out like this, and he's taking a picture and doing that. So they sit down, and I just, being a smart aleck, even though I'm the lowest on the totem pole, I just had to say something. So I said, John, I've always liked your pants. He goes, you ain't getting my pants. I said, come on, I want those pants. Let's take a picture, you know, just being stupid. Anyway, kid fit in his pants. So anyway, it was just a funny deal. But isn't that cool? I mean, just adding value. And the fourth thing was, so we got choose every day to add value. Think of ways in the morning of how you're going to do it through your day and how you could add value. Look for ways that just come up. Or number 4 is do things that add value to people. So do things, activate it in all that you're doing. So one of the really cool things that happened is in Nairobi a couple of weeks ago, we went to one of the churches that is working with One Hope. If you don't know about One Hope is God's Word Every Child. They're incredible. They're in 140-something nations of the world. And one of the things they did is partner with John Maxwell to put Lead Today together. Lead Today is for high school students to do value training through all of their year. So every other week they have an hour lesson on leadership. Now you can either do the Lead Today. The Lead Today has the Bible stuff in it, because you can do the I Equip stuff that doesn't have the Bible. It's just values. But this stuff is for nations like Kenya that will let them do Bible verses in it. So this is straight up Bible with values being trained. John Maxwell leadership with kids, right? We've already have, listen to this. We already, with One Hope, have 5 million kids in Africa right now who are doing the Lead Today program in their public schools. 5 million. It's only 2 years in. This day, when we were together, we were at this church with 200 high school students from like 20 different schools that have been the beta test for Kenya. This was going to be the kickoff for all of the Kenyan schools to start. And so we were there and we were cutting a ribbon on the Lead Today books and everything. It's so cool. John doesn't speak first. Guess who speaks first? They choose 4 high school students to come up and each one of them to give a 5-minute presentation of what they've been learning on leadership. John's down there with tears in his eyes as he's watching these kids speak on what they've learned in the Lead Today. But guess what he's doing? He's down there and he's going, what's that kid's name? What's that kid's name? That was Timmy? Okay, he writes down Timmy. And he listens to the kid and he's down there and you don't know what is he doing, but he's writing down the notes of the key points that kid just said in his talk. Then he goes to the next little girl, Gabriella, and Gabriella, he's got her name down and the point she made. He gets up and when it's his time to speak, you know what he does? He says to everybody, I am so impressed. And he says, Timmy, when you spoke, this is the point, the biggest point I got out of what you said. Let me just say, I appreciate that so much. And then he would expound on that point. Gabriella, when you spoke is this, and then he used a point from each one of those kids and called them by name and said, I'm so impressed with what you just shared. That means so much. Let me tell you about that. And he would talk about it. And then you know what he did? He said, I want the 4 of you to come back up after this talk is over and get a picture with me. I need your picture. Why? It's going in my book because I'm going to use your points in my newest book in chapter 8. I'm going to talk about you and about everybody in this room and what's happening through you guys in Lead Today in Kenya. He just did something. You know what he ended with? He talked about how David was a little boy, but God called him to be king, even though his dad and mom rejected him and didn't even count him as somebody who could be king. He said, guess what? His brothers rejected him. Even Goliath said, who is this guy? But God chose him and put him and anointed him to be king. Here's the thing. He looked at everybody and he goes, I wonder which one of you is going to be David in this room, or Davida. I wonder which one of you in this room is going to become the king or the president of this country. And guess what? Whoever it is in here, I'm asking you, when you become the president, invite me back. I'll come speak for you. I'm telling you, there must have been 10 kids who came up and hugged him and said, hey, I believe I'm the David. He just took that thing about and moved it from him being the cool guy in the room or being the expert in the room to saying, you've taught me, you have value, you're going to be the leaders, this is all about you, and he turned it all around. What if you could do things like that where it's not about what you're teaching but what you're learning, and you teach off of what you're learning from them? Amazing. When we were in Costa Rica, one of the people on our trip was Barbara. Barbara was one of John's very first administrative assistants. And Barbara helped him start the Enjoy Tape Club. Barbara helped him start Equip. Barbara helped him start all of these ministries that are now gigantic with the 5 million kids and, now over 6 million trained in the nations and training with leaders and pastors. All these things are happening now, but Barbara was there when it was really just getting started. So you know what he said? He said, Barbara, I'm paying your way to come with me to Costa Rica to spend the 6 days with me because I want you to see everything that your ministry started. So every day we'd walk around and he'd do it. But one day, it was at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and everybody's off of the van. We're about to go into this big meeting. It's a big, big deal. And everybody gets off but John and Barbara. And John just tells everybody, y'all just wait out there. And for like 15 minutes, John and Barbara sit in the van. And you could see them in there because the van was open, the lights are on, all this. They're sitting in there. And John's in there. And you know what I found out later? I told John, what were y'all doing? You all right? Because he's teaching me all along. You know what he says? He said, that lady was with me when we had none of this. And it's only right that she'd get to see the fruit of her labor. And so I sat in there, and it was 15 minutes with, I'm telling you, 500 people standing outside waiting for him to get done on an outside conference. And they could all see him in there talking to that lady for 15 minutes. She has tears coming down her face as he's looking at her straight in the eye, forgetting everybody else and saying, all of this is possible because you helped me. That's amazing. Shouldn't we all be looking for ways to add value like that? To thank people, to give credit? Instead of trying to take credit, give credit. Instead of trying to get everybody to value you, you're valuing them. The last one is, How about we don't just choose to add value, think of ways and look for ways and do ways, but what if we actually encourage others to add value to people as well? When we were in Costa Rica, remember how I told you that there were 250 JMT guys there and ladies, the trainers. They came in at the end of the week after they had trained 15,000 people. And we had the biggest party, steak, the nicest, think about the nicest spread of food ever you could see. There's like 250 of them, but all of the other church leaders, all the other people, the community leaders, all the different people, even the Speaker of the House, who was our coordinator there in Costa Rica, for the government. Can you even believe that? The Speaker of the House is your coordinator. But there's like 400 people, and we go out there, and when we start, and the spokesman says, "Welcome, JMT, everybody. Hasn't it been a great week?" Right when they all yell, fireworks go off. Like a full fireworks display goes off, gigantic, up in the air. Everybody starts screaming and yelling, and all of a sudden, that kind of music going on because we're in Costa Rica, and these ladies come out dancing, and the guys are like this, and they're dancing and doing a whole routine, and then we go in to eat, and John turns to me when we sit down, he goes, "I just want you to know, this isn't your missions dollars. I pay for this personally. I don't want you to think your missions money's going to this party. But if these guys are going to come on their own dime to come from all over the world to come do this, and if all these people give all their hours for free, somebody needs to give them a party." And we go in and we don't just party. Guess what? That dude dances. They got the full band going, and they got a DJ over here, and it's like crazy. It's crazy. And John stands out in the middle, and he isn't over to the side. He's gone to every single table personally and shook hands with every single person, thanking them for coming. And when they get the music going, he's out there and he's dancing with all the people, acting funny, dancing. And it's funny because after about an hour, he's out there, and a lady will come up, and he's like, "Doom, doom, da da do, da 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 da." Then another lady come over, "Do, da 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 da." Then he's like this, and that goes on for an hour. He's sweating. The ladies are coming over, going, "Oh, John, take a drink. You're okay." Towel, wipe his face. But after about an hour that he's dancing with all these people, he comes over to me. He goes, "Did you see that?" I said, "Oh yeah, I saw you. Pretty good, huh?" And then he whispered to me, he says, "Look, anybody can throw a party for people. But people who want to add value, party with them." He says, "I can put it together for them, but it's a whole other thing when I get out and I'll be with them." And so I think that's pretty amazing. One last story about encouraging others to add value. As he was there dancing with them and doing all that, because he's saying, "Thank you. I want to encourage you guys to keep giving your life away, and let's celebrate that together." But this last story is pretty cool, that we were meeting this just a couple of weeks ago in Nairobi with several senators and young parliamentarians. These are people that are the youngest leaders in parliament and coming up. And so we're meeting in a private meeting. This was after a big meeting, and these guys were in a room to ask questions. One of the guys asked John in the room, "Hey, John, what's the greatest accomplishment of all your life so far in what you do?" And John was so cool because he said this. He goes, "That's a great question. And I guess I could reflect and pull something out and say something, but I've got some people in the room with me." And he turned to Kevin Myers, the pastor at 12 Stone, who he's been mentoring and training for 20 years. He said, "This is Kevin Myers, and I've been mentoring him for 20 years, and he pastors a great church in Atlanta. And this is Scott Wilson. He pastors an incredibly influential, I shouldn't say it like that. That's what he said. Influential church in Dallas. And I've only been mentoring him for a couple of years, but man, love him." And this is Mark Cole. He heads up all of my organizations. And then he said, "This is Terrence. He heads up all of our work with Equip and nonprofits." He said, "You might want to ask them because I only mentor about 10 people close, but these are some of them. And let's just ask them what they think the greatest accomplishment is." And so Mark goes, Kevin goes, and I'm able to share for a minute about what John means to us and what I've seen in John's life and his biggest accomplishment, all this. But why was that huge? Because John knows he's 71 years old. He also knows that if he's going to continue to train in all these different countries, he's not going to be able to do all of the national transformation on his own. And so he's got Kevin and me there. He's got Terrence and Mark there because he's wanting to expand our leadership influence in the eyes of those people so that he can send us on his behalf when he can't be there, and that the influence just keeps increasing. So instead of him talking about what he thinks is the greatest accomplishment, he turns it and then causes it to be that half of the whole rest of our time together was them asking us questions, not John, because they said, we want to learn how to learn from a John like you have. So how do you do that? How do you connect? And what John did is he said, I want to not just add value to people, but I want to encourage these guys to do it as well. Now, when I got home, you got the 5, right? You got the 5 in your head. But when I got home, I started looking at this and thinking about it and saying, now, how can I systematically find a way to get this in my head every day to keep adding value, to increase influence in people's lives? So one of the things I did is I came home and I said, I'm going to put an Excel sheet together for every morning when I pray. I'm going to put a list, and here's a picture of what it looks like. It's got my family. It's got my extended family. It's got the top leaders and givers. It's got the board members. It's got my staff. It's got all the people from E21 and ORU and JMT, our John Maxwell team, all of those people. It has all of the people who are in our Oaks Church network and pastors that we mentor and that I'm honored to be like a spiritual father to. And so every day I go across like this, because it's 8 different sections or groups, and I go across every day like this, and I pray for them, and it just says, praying for you this morning, and then I begin to write a text prophetically of what God's telling me to pray for them about, and I send it to them. Let me tell you something. Those 8 people, probably at least 5 of them every day will write back and say, how did you know? That's exactly what I need to hear today. Thank you so much. And that's a way that I can stay systematically in touch with adding value to those people. Now, I'm looking for other ways. I'm doing other things. But this gives me a system to add value. What's your system? What are you developing as a plan to add value to key people in your life? You can say, I love people. I value people. That's very good. But if you're shooting to love everyone without having someone in mind, you probably aren't going to be doing much adding value to anyone. So that's what you want to do, is add value, choose to do it every day, think of ways, look for ways, do it, encourage other people to do it. And man, God is going to increase your influence in the kingdom because you're not thinking about yourself. You're serving Him. And you're serving others and adding value. Cool. Thanks for letting me be a part of this conference. Thanks, Pastor Joseph. You're the best. And love you guys. Hope you have a great rest of this time together.